All right, for every conditional statement, if P then Q, there are three statements that are related to that one. They are called the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive, okay? What I want you to realize as you go through, for the conditional, if you have if P then Q, the converse switches the P and the Q around. In other words, it switches the if and the then part. The inverse keeps the conditional in the same order, if P then Q. It just negates both the P and the Q. And then the contrapositive flips the if and the then for an inverse around. Okay, so there are some definite connections between the four different kinds of statements. What we're going to do is take a look at the truth values for the conditional, the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive. Since we need not P and not Q to evaluate the truth of the inverse and the contrapositive, we will go ahead and fill those particular columns out first. So we've got a false, false, true, true, and a false, true, false, true. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and evaluate the conditional. So using column P and column Q, the only time an if then is false is if we have an if true, then false. So that means that only the second one is false. And again, that should be old hat by now. We've done that a bunch of times. Going over to the converse, if Q, then P. So we're going to look at the if Q column, then P. So we have if true, then false would be false. So this one is false. All the rest are trues. For the inverse, if not P, then not Q. So we're going to switch to those first two columns that we filled in, okay, that were not filled in for us. If P, then Q. I'm looking for an if true, then false. So in row 3, I see that that's the case. That's false. Everything else is true. And then looking at the contrapositive, if not Q, then not P. The only one that's got an if true, then false is the second row. So that's false. Everything else is true. Okay, now the colors that I happened to use were used for a reason. If you notice, the conditional here, okay, and the contrapositive here have the same truth values. Remember, that means that they are logically equivalent, okay, logically equivalent. So what that means is a conditional and its contrapositive are logically equivalent. In other words, they mean the same thing, okay? They mean the same thing. They have the same meaning attached to them. Similarly, the converse and the inverse have the same truth values. And so looking at those, the converse and the inverse are logically equivalent, okay? Now this comes into play a lot whenever people start saying things in sometimes like maybe some not so natural ways, and you start to wonder like, wait a minute, do those even mean the same thing? This is one of the ways that you can evaluate that. So we're going to take a look at some statements, and we're also going to decide if one statement is true, which of the others must be true based on whether or not we have a conditional and a contrapositive, a converse and an inverse, etc. Okay, so I'm going to look at this first statement. If Jenny makes the soccer team, so I'm going to make that be the P. Okay, if Jenny makes the soccer team, that's P. She'll have 2 games a week. So there's the Q. Okay, so this is that she makes the team, then she has 2 games a week. This is a conditional. If P, then Q. Okay, the conditional and the contrapositive are logically equivalent. So if we look at the contrapositive, that's the not Q implies not P. What we want to do is find the statement of the 3 bulleted points that would be of the form not Q. So knowing that Q is about playing 2 games, she does not have 2 games a week. Okay, if she doesn't play 2 games, then not P, she did not make the team. Okay, and so let's look and see the one that would match up. If Jenny doesn't have 2 games a week, let's see, that's the last one, then she didn't make the soccer team. And so this last statement here is the one that is also going to be true. Okay, if she makes the team, she'll have 2 games a week. If she doesn't have 2 games a week, then guess what? She didn't make the team. Those are logically equivalent. We're going to do the same thing with the next example here. Okay. So if Tammy does not pass the class, so the does not, that's a not. Okay. So no pass is what the not P is going to mean. Then she won't graduate. Not Q, no graduate. Okay. That, if you'll go back and look at the previous page, this is the inverse. Okay. What is equivalent to the inverse is the converse, which is if Q, then P. So if Q, so not Q is she doesn't graduate, if Q would mean she graduates, then P would be she does pass. Okay, so let's go look for the statement that says, if she graduates, then she passed the class. Okay, and that is the second one right here. If she graduates, then she passed the class. Again, that is equivalent. That is saying the same thing as if she doesn't pass the class, she's not graduating. Okay, same thing. If she graduates, then she had to have passed the class. And that's pretty much what converse, inverse, and contrapositive are all about.